Hello, and welcome to the edgycatholic.com video production of our Game of Thrones analysis. Okay, we would like to propose an alternate ending to the Game of Thrones story, which is more of an edgy Catholic ending. Now, how are we going to do this? First of all, let's talk about the ending to Game of Thrones. We've talked about Game of Thrones on the website, and we've noted that it's probably the edgiest television show ever created. And in a way, we like to think of our society as now in a post-Game of Thrones era, because this is about as edgy as it gets. Okay? But they ended the series, it was kind of an epic fail. Now, it's hard to end a television series. The thing about a television series is they are designed to keep going. You know, you got to have next week's episode, and next week's episode, and next week's episode, right? So when you want to come to an end and conclude it, that's a whole different kind of storytelling. And they blow it often, right? So you can think of a lot of your major television series that were very popular that came to ends that were not very good. And, you know, you can think of even the Seinfeld, if you want a comedy. I remember the Xena Warrior Princess ending was miserable. And it's just hard to do. If you remember the show Lost, a lot of people were disappointed with how that ended. It's hard to come to a good conclusion on something that you've been trying to keep going for 8 seasons. But the Game of Thrones had an advantage, and they still blew it. Now, the advantage is that Game of Thrones was set up as a tournament. Tournaments have built-in suspense, man. You want to see who's going to win. And who's going to win the tournament is the one who's left at the end, has defeated all the other adversaries, and that's the one who wins. But when the Game of Thrones writers wrote the last episode of the Game of Thrones, they kind of threw it to a committee. Let's go to our panel of judges and say, who's going to win? Who do we think is most worthy to win? And he won because they thought he had the best story. This was pretty lame, right? So we would like to propose an edgier and a more Catholic way of ending this story. But let's first talk about some of the things that need fixing, okay? First of all, the Battle of Winterfell, you know, the strategy made no sense at all, okay? So you're up against an army of the dead, and you send your people out to fight them in a melee battle, you know, with a cavalry charge. I mean, that's not very smart. You have your people standing in front of the barriers that can protect them from what is only, you know, like infantry armed with weapons that can slash or whatever. I mean, what did the dead have? I mean, they weren't shooting arrows. So you could have been behind all those barriers, and you could have been shooting projectile weapons, and you could have had a much better strategy to actually win if you wanted to go up against them straight away. Now, the writers made this flaw. You know, they hinted at a strategy, and then they didn't use the strategy they hinted at. I mean, it wasn't even, it was more than a hint. They pretty much said Bran was what the Night King was coming for Bran, and they knew that. Well, they were going to use him for bait. And how did they use him for bait? He was just sitting there with Theon and a few men who, at least they had arrows. But, you know, that's not much of a strategy to capture the Night King. Now, what you would want to do, if you want to write a good story, is you got to have a plan that failed. And then maybe Arya comes out of nowhere to save the day. But you had no plan, right? So it was just, let's wait for the Night King to come and get Bran. And, you know, hopefully Arya will figure out that she needs to come and save the day. That's not a very good, that's not good writing, okay? So there were lots of problems with this. You also had, you have two dragons who can, burn up the dead as they're approaching. You don't need to be sending cavalry out to try to fight them. It was just silly. Okay. Now what else was bad? Okay. Um, Danny. Danny all along has been this righteous warrior, which, you can make that her downfall. That's fine. To say at the end that she wants to break the wheel and she wants to keep fighting, and that's a problem, that isn't necessarily a bad thing. But you can't then have her wipe out a bunch of civilians just because, well, I don't like them. I mean, all along she's been in these battles where she's been fighting the aristocracy, the leaders who enslave people, those guys, the bad guys. She doesn't go after civilians, and it would be forgivable if you made her crazy, but they didn't make her crazy enough to justify that kind of an action, and then they went back to she wants to break the wheel. So that's just confusing. Why did she kill all the people? She was going to try to break the wheel in order to help those people, right? So it really fell flat. That was really kind of silly. And at the end, the dragon, after Jon kills the dragon's mother, the dragon takes his wrath out on the throne and then flies away. Now, you have your biggest element of power is the dragon. He is the thing that can make an exciting last episode. And you just let him fly away. That's unforgivable. I'm just saying that's just really troubling writing. Okay, and then the whole show, the theme of the whole show, is the Game of Thrones. You play, you win, or you die, right? So what is this business of having a committee award the ending, right? So all of that's lost. It's like you went through 8 seasons of hammering home this theme of treachery is okay as long as it gets you to the throne, right? The only thing that matters is getting to the throne. Winning the throne, winning the Game of Thrones. That's it. You win or you die. And then at the end, it's, well, we think the lame kid should win. Now, I'm using the word lame for a reason, right? Because the story was lame. Okay, so that just that's unsatisfying, we'll say. Okay, so now let's try to reconstruct the ending and make it an edgy Catholic ending. Okay, first of all, the Lannisters say we're not showing up to fight against the dead. We're going to wait until you guys dispatch them. You'll be so weakened that you will not be able to resist us and won't be in charge. This is their plan. Now, that's not a plan that the Game of Thrones players who are playing to win, you win or you die, you don't take that one lightly, right? So that's not something you just say, well, okay, we'll go along with that plan and have a really ridiculous strategy to defend Winterfell, okay? So let's let's come up with a better plan. Okay? Now, what would happen if Jon Snow said, okay, the Lannisters, they're not showing up, so they're not showing up for the war, so let's let the war go to them. Okay? So, what we're going to do is we're going to take Bran, who the Night King is after, and we are going to sail him on a boat around down into Blackwater Bay, which is south of King's Landing. Now, the only way for a land-based troop to get down to where their object is, Bran, who is your bait, which you said you were going to use for bait, is for them to go through King's Landing. And who's at King's Landing? Cersei Lannister's at King's Landing. The army that didn't show up is at King's Landing. So now you're forcing them to fight the dead. Okay? So then Jon says, well, and while we're at it, we are not going to try to defend Winterfell. That's kind of silly. Let's go, you know, Winterfell is like right in the Dead's path. If you look at the map, right, that's the route right down King's Road. Gonna, you know, you go through Winterfell down to King's Road, go right down to King's Landing. So let's just get out of Winterfell, and we can go over to this Hornwood, right, which is protected with rivers all around, right? I'm assuming that the Dead are having trouble with rivers and water because, like, the wall goes to the ocean and then it stops. So if the Dead could swim, they'd swim around the wall. You got this gigantic wall blocking them. Well, if they can swim, they'll go around it, right? If they had a way to go around the wall, they'd just go around it. So I'm assuming they're having trouble with water and water crossings, right? Wouldn't you think? So here's what you do. You cross over the river, you go over to Hornwood, which has got rivers all around it, right? And you blow the bridges. So there's no bridges to go across. So the Dead now can't cross the bridges because you burned them. You're safe over on that side. You've got a clear path for the Dead to go right down King's Road, down to King's Landing. And that's where you got your bait, down there in Blackwater Bay, which is Bran on a boat. Okay? Now, this plan, you could have, you know, Sansa say, oh, you know, we can't do that. We got to defend our home. It's Winterfell. And Jon could say something like, the Dead don't want castles, you know. They're not looking to capture land. They're looking to create more Dead, and they're looking to get Bran. Those are their objectives. They don't give a crap about Winterfell, right? So why should we, right? Let's keep our army alive and in the field. Now, after these the army of the Dead goes marching down to King's Landing, then we can follow them up, and now we've got the Dead on two fronts. You know, we're fighting from behind, and in front the Lannisters are fighting. We forced them into the war, okay? So I think you could dispatch that kind of thinking pretty easily, right? Now, you have to make an interesting story, this strategy fail, right? It can't just go smoothly, because if it does, you know, there's not much of a story. So my thinking is, you know, if you're sending Bran on that boat, you do need to protect him, right, first of all, because the Night King has a dragon. He can fly, and if he has enough location sense of Bran, he can fly down there on his dragon and cause trouble. So you need the dragon to have cover over there to protect, you know, the boat. And you also probably want to send Arya down there. So she's down there so she can pull her move and, you know, save the day, killing the Night King. You know, because she's down in the battle with Bran where the Night King is going to be, right? So that would make some sense, okay? But the strategy can fail. You can have the, you know, what's his name? The Greyjoy guy. You can have him shoot down the dragon, right? The dragon's there protecting the boat. He shoots down the dragon. You still get your dramatic scene with the dragon getting shot down. You introduce this idea of the scorpion being an effective weapon against dragons, right? And you still have that element of the story. You can have Bran captured and brought in to King's Landing, and now he's kind of like Cersei's prisoner, but, well, still, the Night King is after Bran, all right? So that's kind of a troubling thing for Cersei. You know, she might eventually figure that out and have to do something to let him go or whatever. So you can write around that story too, okay? Now, if you would at least have a strategy there where you're using Bran as a bait. You know, you could work that out and make it work. You force the Lannisters into the battle with the Dead. You have, you know, a clever Game of Thrones kind of a sneaky strategy to win against the army of the Dead, and not to just fall into Cersei's plan, right? So that one of the things that was disappointing is everything just was kind of going to plan here, okay? So now, what does this set up? Well, in the final episode, you still can have your standoff with Cersei, but you can't have Cersei, you know, just die with the roof collapsing. That's not a dramatic enough end for her. you need a strategy to defeat the scorpions. If the scorpions are a deadly effective weapon against dragons, you can't have them so accurate and just easily killing a dragon in one episode, and in the next episode they're just feckless and fruitless and just don't do anything, which is what happened in the actual series. So you have to come up with a strategy. So what you could say is, if you look at those scorpions, they only have a certain angle, that they can shoot at. And if the dragon is flying at a high enough altitude and comes dive bobbing down at a more vertical angle, they don't have an angle to get a good shot at them, So they would be a little bit vulnerable. There is a way that you could arrange those things that you could have a more effective shot, which you might have them figure out. But the way they had them set up, they weren't ready for that. So if you had an aerial tactic like that you came in at an angle where they couldn't shoot at you, it would make sense that you were able to destroy the scorpions and that they were still an effective weapon, just you had found a way to defeat them, which they didn't do in the show. They just had, 1 week they shot down a dragon without even thinking and almost shot down the other one. And the next week, well, gee whiz, they weren't effective at all. Okay. So, we think that in the end, Cersei needs to be captured, right? She needs to face justice from the Dragon Queen, face to face. You could even have her trying to kill herself because she doesn't want to face justice because she knows it's coming or whatever, and doesn't want to give them the victory. But you stop her, right? So you stop her, you capture her, and you bring her in front of the court. Now, if you want Dany to be the Mad Queen, you've got to sell it more. You have to make her seem like she's going crazy. Now, you have her crazy brother, she could have visions of her brother taunting her, saying you don't have what it takes to be the Dragon Queen, and you have to burn them all, and you have to show them, and you have to you have dragon blood, be the Dragon Queen, and you could have her goading her on all kinds of ways because that guy was kind of crazy, right? And he could be in her head, right? So you would have Cersei really kind of going mad, rather than what you had, which was she just seemed mad at some times, and she didn't seem so mad at other times. And in the end, she said, "I want to make the world a better place, right? And I want you to do it with my armies," which is a kind of a Game of Thrones way to do it. But it didn't. For the Game of Thrones, she didn't seem all that crazy. Now, we remember Jaime when he said that, what was the Mad King saying when you stabbed him in the back? And he said, "Burn them all." That's crazy, right? So you can work this in. Now, you make Dany a little bit more crazy, and you have her, you build that up more, okay? So you could have Dany even having a discussion with Jon, being a little paranoid, saying, like, "You're trying to take this away from me," and then he could say, like, "Well, I'm really not taking anything away from you because I'm really the rightful heir. It never was yours, right? So I'm not taking it, I wouldn't be taking it away, but I don't want it anyway." You could have him being this virtuous guy who's going to be true to his word and saying, "I'm the guy who's true to his word, and I pledge my fealty to you, and even though I did it before I knew I was the true heir, I'm going to maintain that. You're the queen, you're my queen, I'm sticking with you," right? But she's paranoid and she's, thinking, "Oh, I got to get rid of this guy," right? So you could have that kind of thing going on in her head and make her really crazy and him really virtuous. That would work, right? Jon could even say that, she might make some mention that she wants to break the wheel, and he could say, "You've already broken it." Like, all the big families are all destroyed, and they're really not left. There's not many Baratheons left, and there's there's the Lannisters. You've now have them captured at the end, and who else is there? The Martells are gone. There's not many people left. The Game of Thrones is really kind of taking care of most of the other pretenders. The wheel is pretty much broken. There isn't really anybody else to go, but maybe she's crazy and sticking with it, and Jon has to kind of talk to her about it and say, "Hey, what do you mean?" And so they could have that kind of an argument, right? And you could even have Dany say something like, "You may be the true heir, but I'm the mother of dragons, and which counts for more?" because the way the Game of Thrones is played, man, the Dragon Queen counts for more than being the true heir. True heir makes you a target to be offed more than anything else. Because power is the only virtue in the Game of Thrones, right? That's what the lesson has been all along, right? So, now, you can have this last day of judgment. Now, this is kind of a edgy kind of a scene, and it would probably not make friends with a lot of people, a lot of fans who were rooting for certain characters, but, you know, Dany's now got the position, right? She's got the dragon, she's got her enemy's captain, and she brings him in for judging, right? So, you know, remember, go back all the way to the first scene, one of the first scenes in this show where Ned was chopping the guy's head off, you know, making the judgment, right? So here we are again. Now, what is Dany doing, right? And she's a little crazy. So now, she takes Cersei. She condemns Cersei, death by dragon fire, right? And burns her up. And then Jaime Lannister, death by dragon fire, burns him up, right? Then she could have Tyrion. Well, Tyrion's been double playing, and he's been caught in treasonous acts. She judges Tyrion, burns him up. Now, I know a lot of people are going to be like, oh, you can't burn up Tyrion. It's the Game of Thrones, man. You win or you die, and it's time. It's the last episode. Tyrion goes down in the flames of dragonfire, okay? Now, people are watching this, and they're kind of horrified, because it's a raw show of power, right? So people getting a little edgy. So now, well, who's next? This is getting kind of like the real story of the French Revolution, where you got Robespierre pulling people up and cutting off their heads with the guillotine, right? So here she goes. Now, she takes Sansa Stark and says, well, she's not going to condemn Sansa Stark, even though, you know, there's some basis for her treachery with you know, blabbing about Jon's secret, right? But you can't really, as the queen can't really call her out on that. Jon could, but not really Daenerys, because it's just the truth coming out for her, right? So, but you can't have her demanding that she bend the knee. You know, you're the queen in the north, or whatever, the lady of Winterfell. Do you bend the knee to the crown, the new power? And you can have Sansa say, we for thousands of years the north has been free, and we will not bend our knees to any sovereign from the south ever again. In which case, and I have my northern army to back me up on this, right? Well, of course, there's Daenerys, who's a little crazy, saying Draconis and burning up Sansa Stark. Now, people would freak out, but that's the point of the Game of Thrones. You want people to freak out, right? Sansa Stark needs to be burned up, or she wins, right? You win or you die, right? This is the rules of the Games of Thrones. If you want to have an edgy ending, you got to kill off your characters, right? It's a tournament. The one standing at the end is the one who wins. Well, now, you've got a little assassin who the queen hasn't really been thinking about, you know, and that's Arya, right? Arya's got all kinds of slick assassin moves, right? She's good at it. So now she sees her sister being burned up by dragonfire, says, well, I've had enough of that. And she goes and kills the queen, okay? And as she slits the queen's throat, and the last thing the queen says is, burn them all, burn them all. But she's not just speaking to nothing, she's speaking to the dragon, okay? So the dragon takes this order from her and starts burning them all, starting with Arya Stark. Now, again, you know, a lot of people love Arya Stark, you know, the little, you know, it's the end of the game, man. It's time for the dragonfire to burn them all up. This is what makes it edgy, okay? So Arya goes down, burned up with flame, as do almost everybody else, because this dragon's gone berserk, right? So the dragon goes berserk. It's killing off the Grey Worm and the Unsullied. It's killing off the Northmen. It's killing off the rest of the Lannister armies, and it's killing just everybody you can find. It's just on a rampage. Okay, now, so what happens? Jon tries to get Bran to safety. Now, this is what Jon would do. The crippled guy, you got to get the three-eyed raven crippled guy in the wheelchair. You can't let the dragon just burn him up, right? So you have him rescue him and pull him off somewhere. And now Bran, he's the three-eyed raven. He's got some kind of credibility, right? So now you can have Bran speaking to Jon, okay? And he says to Jon, Jon, you have been the bastard of Winterfell. You've been the ranger north of the wall with the wildlings. You've been the commander of the Night's Watch. You've been to the netherworld and returned resurrected. And you've been the king in the north. Now it's time for you to be who you were always meant to be, the Dragon King. Now go, control your dragon or slay it before you have no kingdom left to rule. Okay? So now Jon musters his courage, knows what he needs to do. He needs to find a way to control the dragon because he is a Targaryen, or to slay the dragon. So now he goes, tries to talk to the dragon nice, tries to be Jon, I'm the commander. Maybe he talks sternly to the dragon because I am the true heir of the Targaryens. I am the one with the dragon blood. Whatever, right? Gives a nice speech to the dragon. Well, the dragon says, hey, I'm still pissed off because, you killed my mother. And your sister or whatever killed my mother. So you know what? I'm going to breathe fire on you, right? So the dragon goes and breathes fire on Jon. I know what you're thinking. Jon's all burned up with fire and he's dead and everybody's dead. And my solution is that everybody dies. No. Jon's a Targaryen. He has the dragon blood. The dragon fire. He cannot die by fire. Just like Daenerys Stormborn in the fire with the dragon eggs was not harmed. Jon is not harmed by the dragon fire. He's perfectly fine, right? Now, Jon progresses to the dragon. He's not very happy that it breathed fire on him, obviously. And he stabs the dragon or cuts its head off or whatever, kills the dragon, slays the dragon, and says, the time of dragons is over. It's time for a new way. Now, I think this is a more exciting ending, and it has Jon winning because he's the last of the contestants left. It's an exciting, way to end the story, and it's not only edgy, but it's Catholic because Jon is now a resurrected king, the rightful heir, coming back and establishing a new way, making all things new. And now he emerges as a Christ-like figure, which is one of our examples of an edgy Catholic story, the returning king, returning from the dead even, right? So, very Christ-like. I think it's a better solution. I think it's edgy. I think it's Catholic. And I don't think they would ever make it that way, but you could have made some variation of it and still been more exciting than what they actually did. And you wouldn't have had, you don't have this problem of a, committee appointing who wins. Okay? So that's my alternate edgy Catholic ending to the Game of Thrones. I know this video was a little bit long, but thank you for spending some time. Now, if you're interested, my book, When the Wood is Dry, an edgy Catholic thriller, does feature a Christ-like character. Of course, it's not a returning king. It is a story of crucifixion and resurrection. And it's very interesting that way. It is not a literal crucifixion, but it's a symbolic crucifixion. And it's not a literal resurrection, but a symbolic resurrection. But it's quite obvious that that's what it is. So you can check that out at the link in the description here. Again, this is Joseph Soule Jr. For edgycatholic.com. And just saying, Stay edgy, but not too edgy. And if you're Catholic, go to confession, okay? Thank you very much. Have a great day.